My name is Blake Austin, and what I'm about to tell you has cost me everything. My sleep, my silence, my sanity. I have wrestled with this moment like Jacob in the dark, because once I say it, once I speak it out loud, there is no turning back. I died, not symbolically, not in a metaphor. I died, and in the silence that followed the last beat of my heart, I met him, not an idea, not a doctrine, Jesus. He stood in a place beyond time, and when he spoke, the universe quieted to listen. He said to me, word for word, "The Yellowstone eruption will be worse than ever before." I saw it, not with these eyes, but with the eyes that awaken when flesh is left behind. I saw the ground rupture like a wound that had waited centuries to break. I saw a fire not from hell, but from heaven, a holy fire, a cleansing fire, and a devastating one. I didn't want to believe him, not because I doubted him, but because I knew what it meant. It meant millions wouldn't be ready. It meant comfort would be torn away like a curtain. It meant that the hour is later than we think. I'm trembling as I say this, because this story is not mine to own. It's a burden, a message, a vow I made before I returned. He told me to warn them. He told me to speak. And I tried to run. I tried to bury it beneath reason, beneath the noise of everyday life. But silence has teeth, and the truth hunts. For years, I carried this in secret. But secrets grow heavy in the soul. They rot, they burn. So I'm here because obedience matters more than reputation. Because when Jesus Christ reveals the future to a man, that man is no longer free to pretend he didn't see. This is not a theory. This is not a dream. This is not a guess. This is a warning. And I know some of you will mock this. Some of you will click away. But some of you were meant to hear this. Because you, too, have felt the tremble beneath your feet. You, too, have heard the whisper in the wind. He called my name in the dark, and now I am calling yours. He called my name in the dark, and now I am calling yours. He called my name in the dark. Will you answer? Before everything broke open, before my soul was torn from this body and dragged across the veil, I lived a quiet life, the kind that hums so steadily you almost forget you're alive. I lived in a small ranger outpost just outside Yellowstone, nestled beneath the arms of pine and the long silence of the sky. My days were predictable. Coffee before dawn, patrols by sunrise, radio check-ins, and the occasional tourist warning about bears they'd never see. The rhythm was safe, too safe. It kept my spirit sedated. I didn't know it at the time, but my soul was beginning to starve. I walked among ancient trees and boiling springs, surrounded by beauty, but I no longer saw it. I had become numb, alive in the body, but sleeping in the soul. I was a man drifting between weather patterns and wildlife reports, logging temperatures and volcanic tremors like they were just numbers in a system. But creation speaks, even when we refuse to listen. And it had started whispering. There were mornings when the air tasted wrong, too heavy, too still. There were days when the animals disappeared, not slowly, but all at once, as if they knew something I didn't. Birdsong would cease. The geysers would roar louder than usual. And at night, I began to dream. Dreams that didn't feel like dreams. Flashes of fire beneath my feet. A red sky weeping ash. People running without direction. Children reaching up through smoke. I told myself it was stress. I told myself I was tired. But deep down I knew something was coming. Something ancient. Something holy. Something terrifying. I remember standing at the edge of the canyon, staring into the vast, breathing mouth of Yellowstone. Steam rose like incense from the earth, curling into morning air as if the land itself were praying. And in that moment I felt it, a stillness, so deep it frightened me, like the breath before the scream, like the pause between the lightning and the thunder. But I said nothing. I did nothing, because I was still clinging to control, still convinced that if I just stuck to my routine, the world would remain tame. I did not yet understand that obedience isn't safety, it's surrender, and I had not yet surrendered. I went about my days pretending not to notice the signs. The cracks in the soil, the restless animals, the way my shadow felt like it no longer belonged to me. Even my reflection had changed. There were days I'd catch my own eyes in the mirror and feel haunted, like something was watching me from within myself. The shift didn't come with fanfare. It came like a slow turning of the wind. Something ancient in the ground had begun to stir, and I could feel it. But I kept walking the perimeter, kept filling out my reports, kept drinking my coffee in silence, kept ignoring the ache in my chest that whispered. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. I was drifting from purpose, drifting from the one I hadn't spoken to in years. I had turned my back on prayer, and I mistook my silence for peace. But God doesn't stop speaking just because we stop listening. And when he speaks to wake the dead, he speaks through fire. I didn't know it then, but the countdown had already begun. The peace I clung to was not peace at all. It was a silence before the rupture, and the land I loved was already trembling beneath me. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, beneath an overcast sky that hung too low for comfort. I had just finished a patrol along the West Ridge, not far from the Obsidian Cliffs. The wind was sharp that day, cutting through my coat as if trying to reach something deeper, something beneath the skin, something buried. There were no sirens, no flashing signs, just a pressure in my chest, sudden, strange, and an absolute, not like a punch, not like a burn. It was as if the air had collapsed around me, folding in, erasing the line between breath and absence. I dropped to my knees first. The cold soil bit through the fabric of my pants. My hands reached out for something that wasn't there. And then the sound, a low thrum, a hum beneath reality, like the earth was speaking through my ribcage. My vision dimmed, not like fading light, but like someone slowly closing the curtains from within. And all at once, the world became a tunnel of echoes. Birdsong dissolved. The wind vanished. Only my heartbeat remained, louder than thunder, frantic, terrified. And then, still, the fall was gentle, like being cradled by gravity itself. My back met the ground, but I didn't feel pain, just surrender. Time began to stretch. Not seconds, not hours, just space. Endless, shimmering space. I remember the moment I slipped out. It wasn't violent. It was beautiful, like stepping through a membrane made of memory. One breath, then none, then something else. I was above my body, floating, not like a balloon, but like thought, like awareness itself had been unchained from flesh. There I was, still, pale, eyes open to sky I could no longer see. And there I was, watching from above, from beside, from nowhere and everywhere. And then everything went silent, perfectly, completely silent. But it wasn't the silence of death. It was the silence of revelation, of waiting, of the veil lifting. That's when I felt it, warmth without heat, light without source, pulling me gently forward, not with force, but invitation, like a voice that doesn't speak words, but still says everything. There was no tunnel, not in the way I'd imagined. No bright white flash. Only layers peeling back. Of time. Of fear. Of identity. I left the body the way you leave a room you didn't know you'd outgrown. I stepped beyond the veil, as if it had always been waiting for me to notice it. And in that space, where thought and spirit entwine, where flesh means nothing and truth becomes breath, I remembered that I am not the skin. I am not this job. I am not this voice. I am the soul, ancient, loved, known, and even before I could speak, before I could ask, before I could tremble in awe, he was there, not in the distance, not arriving, but present, eternal, and though no voice spoke aloud, I heard it again. He called my name in the dark. And again, he called my name in the dark. I had left the world behind, but I had not left purpose. And what lay ahead would undo everything I thought I understood about fire, about mercy, and about the voice that shakes mountains. That was the moment I died, not as punishment, but as invitation, to see what no man should see, to carry what few would believe, to become the messenger I never asked to be. And so I drifted weightless, surrendered, into the place where eternity begins. And the warnings are written in flame. There are no maps for where I went. No compass can point to it. No scholar can chart it. It was not a place, but a presence. Not a destination, but a revelation. I crossed over, but not through a tunnel of white light, as the world so often imagines. No, the path I took was woven with memory. Not my memories alone, but all the ones I had brushed against, wounded, healed, or ignored. Each step forward was not a step at all, but a surrender. And with every surrender, another veil fell. I passed through what felt like centuries, not in time, but in weight. Layers of guilt, layers of pride, layers of noise, until I was bare, until I was light, and then colors, but not colors of this world. They breathed, they sang. Each hue held a tone, each tone a truth. They pulsed like the heart of creation, and they pulled me deeper into the womb of eternity. There was music, but no instruments, no rhythm that could be measured, only vibration, sacred, alive, ancient, like the universe was humming to itself in prayer. And then came the scent, like my mother's hands, like cedar after rain, like memory and hope had married and become fragrance. I was no longer afraid, because fear cannot exist where love is sovereign, and love was everywhere. It wasn't the soft, weak kind of love. It was fierce. It was just. It was the kind of love that sees everything, every sin, every secret, every scar, and still chooses to embrace you, not in ignorance, but in full, terrible knowing. And there were others, souls, not as I expected, not robed or winged, but light, intelligences shaped like stars, moving together like a breath held in harmony. Some I knew without names. Others were strangers I had met in passing. A bus driver, a child I had once ignored, a woman I saw cry in a parking lot and never approached. They were there, not judging, just witnessing, as if eternity remembered everything I tried to forget. They made no sound, but their silence spoke, a silence that told me, you were seen, you were measured, you were not forgotten. And then everything stilled, not like a pause, but like a bowing. Even the light seemed to kneel. The music held its breath, and I knew, without being told, he had arrived. The presence. He did not walk. He did not descend. He simply was. The center of all things. The origin of breath. The light before light. And I collapsed, not from fear, but from reverence so total. My spirit could not stand upright in his gaze. If there are knees in eternity, mine were on them. But it wasn't just posture. It was position. The only proper position for a soul that finally sees truth, not as an idea, but as a person. He radiated not heat, but holiness, not light, but life. I felt everything, my whole existence, laid bare in a single glance. He didn't accuse me. He didn't shame me. He simply saw me. And in that seeing, I came undone. There were no words, but his knowing was louder than thunder. He called my name in the dark, and in his presence, I remembered who I was before the world taught me to forget. The earth, Yellowstone, my career, my regrets, they faded, not in importance, but in comparison. Because in that moment, I wasn't Blake the Ranger. I wasn't Blake the sinner. I wasn't Blake the broken. I was Blake, the beloved, the seen, the summoned, and in that stillness, in that roaring silence, I knew something was coming, something I would be shown, something I would be asked to carry. The presence did not speak the way we speak, but my soul heard him, and I knew if I ever returned to Earth, I would carry his message, not as a choice, but as a vow. The fire had not yet come. The prophecy had not yet unfolded, but my spirit was already burning. He called my name in the dark, and I answered not with words, but with surrender, and the light pulled me deeper still, into the revelation that would tear the sky open and make the mountains tremble. He stood there, not on ground, not in air, but in everything, not arriving, not departing, just present, the presence itself, weightless, but heavier than galaxies, invisible yet utterly seen. No eyes, and yet he looked into me, no voice, and yet he spoke. Not the Jesus of paintings or softly lit cathedrals, not the Sunday school figure or the icon hung above doorposts. No, this was the Jesus that thundered behind the veil. This was the Jesus the winds obey, the one whom stars call king and demons call dread. And when he looked at me, everything I'd ever been collapsed like paper. There was no hiding, no flattering resume, no mask of control. I stood naked in the light of truth himself. He didn't accuse. He didn't scold. He simply revealed. In a single gaze, I saw it all. I saw my childhood. Every tear I never cried. Every time I hid my pain in silence because I didn't want to be a burden. I saw the first time I lied. Not because I was wicked, but because I was afraid of being unloved. I saw moments I forgot. A stranger I refused to help. A prayer I never prayed. A promise I never kept. And I saw beauty, too. Moments I didn't know heaven celebrated. A smile given without expectation. A word of kindness whispered to a grieving soul. A broken prayer muttered under breath on a lonely night. Nothing was lost. Nothing was wasted. Everything mattered. And I knew, with trembling certainty, that love was not earned. It had been offered before I even knew my own name. There were no scrolls, no judgment seat, no booming proclamations. Just him, just the knowing, and the unbearable mercy being fully seen and still embraced. And then a silence fell, a sacred, terrible stillness, like the moment just before a king speaks. And then, without sound, he placed something in me, a knowing, a burden, a seed. You were brought here for a reason. I didn't hear in my ears. I heard it in my bones. The marrow of me responded. The breath of me wept, because this was not flattery. This was assignment. He had pulled me from the earth not just to comfort me, but to commission me. I was shown a future not meant for curiosity, but for warning. He had called me through death, not for my sake, but for yours. He called my name in the dark, so I could call yours in the light. His presence burned, not like fire that destroys, but like fire that purifies. And I was undone in that flame. The memories of Yellowstone returned, the boiling ground, the trembling trees, the breathless animals that had vanished before the event. And I understood now what they felt. The land itself had been weeping, groaning, longing for redemption. Jesus turned, though he never moved, and the world shifted. And that's when the visions began. He didn't explain. He didn't lecture. He revealed. He opened a curtain in the spirit. And behind it, I saw the future, raw and unfiltered, like fire caught in a mirror, like thunder translated into vision. But even as the revelation stirred, he held me in that gaze. He never left. He never flinched. And I knew, whatever he was about to show me, it would not just shake my understanding. It would cost me everything. Because some truths don't belong in silence. Some visions demand a voice. And I had become the voice. Because I had looked into the eyes of eternity and still dared to breathe. He called my name in the dark, and now I am calling yours. The presence prepared me, not with armor, but with surrender, not with confidence, but with obedience. And as the vision grew, and the veil between realms thinned, I braced myself, because what he was about to show me, what he etched into my spirit with light and sorrow, would make the sky tremble, and the ground roar, and still I said yes, and then the veil tore open. It wasn't sound, it wasn't wind, it was a holy unraveling, like heaven had peeled back the curtain, and said, "Look," not with curiosity, but with commission. I was lifted, not flying, not soaring, but ascending through knowing, up and above the world I had once walked, and there below me, the earth, blue and breathing, wounded and waiting, spinning on mercy. And then Yellowstone. I saw it, not the way satellites see it, not as coordinates on a map. I saw it through eternity's lens. The ancient wound beneath the mountain, the great sleeping mouth of fire. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, deep, and desperate. I felt its sorrow, its rage, its hunger. And then the tremble began, a soundless quake, a groaning that stretched from soil to sky. The earth groans, the earth groans, the earth groans. The ground split, the rocks bled, and fire screamed upward like a trumpet made of judgment. I saw ash, not drifting, but racing, devouring. The skies turned black, then red, then void. Mountains were swallowed, cities swallowed, people running, hiding, vanishing in clouds of suffocating dust. The air itself rebelled. No breath, no light, no time to repent. And beneath it all, beneath the horror, was the silence of heaven watching, not indifferent, but righteous, because this was not just geological, it was spiritual, not just eruption, but reckoning. They must awaken, they must awaken, they must awaken. I saw nations silence in an hour. I saw wealth turn to ash. I saw scientists stunned into prayer, and governments into ruin. Yellowstone had erupted, yes, but not just a volcano. The lie had erupted. The slumber had erupted. The denial had erupted. This was not nature's rage. This was mercy in its most terrifying form. And then his voice, not from beside me, but within, it reverberated through every atom of my being. This is what they chose. Not because I did not warn them, but because they refused to listen. The earth has echoed their rebellion. The fire has heard their silence. And I wept, not for the mountains, not for the buildings, but for the souls, the children, the mothers, the stubborn, the distracted. I wept for every time I saw a sign and turned away, for every time I felt the tremble in the air and called it weather, for every night the Spirit whispered, and I rolled over in bed. He called my name in the dark, and I ignored it. And now, he had shown me what I had to carry. Not a prediction, not a forecast, but a prophecy. This eruption is coming, not because he hates, but because he loves too deeply to remain silent. The land is aching, the sky is warning, the Spirit is shouting, but the people are asleep. They must awaken. The earth groans. Return to the fire, return to the fire, return to the fire. And I had been chosen, not to run from it, but to run into it, to come back with smoke in my lungs and truth in my mouth. And as I watched Yellowstone consume the old, I saw something hidden, beneath the ashes, beneath the ruin, seeds, buried, protected, waiting, because even in judgment, there is mercy. Even in fire, there is a seed of rebirth, but only for those who awaken. They must awaken. The earth groans. Return to the fire. I did not ask for this vision, but I vowed if I ever returned, I would tell it, not to scare, but to shake, not to condemn, but to call, because what I saw cannot be undone, and what he said cannot be unsaid. I saw Yellowstone erupt, and I saw souls cry out not for safety, but for salvation. And still he stood, Jesus, in the fire, unafraid, unshaken, calling, summoning. And now I carry his call. He called my name in the dark. So I would call yours in the light. Return to the fire. Return to fire. Return before the ground opens. I thought the vision would end in ash. I thought the fire was the final word. But in the silence that followed the roar, I saw something more, not less terrifying, but infinitely more holy. The sky, once black with smoke, began to pulse with a golden hue, like heaven itself had breathed over the ashes. And from that scorched ground, from the places that had burned beyond recognition, I saw movement, not panic, not chaos, but worship. A sound rose, not from choirs, but from broken voices, hoarse from crying, tender from repentance. I saw people rising, not in pride, but in surrender. They lifted hands to the smoke-stained sky. They wept into soil still hot from judgment. They gathered in fields, in ruins, in open streets where cathedrals once stood. No stages, no titles, just fire-lit faces hungry for the breath of God. They had survived, not because they were strong, but because they had listened, because they had wept before the shaking, because they had returned before the fire. These were not the powerful, not the famous. They were the humble, the hidden ones. I saw a child leading a prayer that turned into prophecy. I saw elders laying hands on the sick and watching them stand. I saw the homeless feeding the wealthy. I saw skeptics falling to their knees, not out of fear, but because truth had overtaken their pride. And I heard him again. The fire is the invitation. The fire is the invitation. I saw dreams awakening in the hearts of the abandoned. I saw old men and women long silenced, now prophesying with clarity, with tears, with trembling authority. I saw the veil torn across the nations, the Spirit poured out like oil, running down faces and hands, seeping into cities like rain on dry earth. This was not religion. This was not revival as man has known it. This was reformation, reclamation, a turning of the soul back to its maker. The ones who rose from the ash were marked, not with tattoos, not with symbols, but with obedience, with love that bled, with fire in their eyes and rivers in their mouths. They spoke not to impress, but to awaken. They lived not to preserve themselves, but to carry others through. They had been broken. They had been called fools. They had been mocked in the days of silence. But now, they were the remnant, the ones who remembered, the ones who bowed before they were forced to, the ones who believed when belief was expensive. He called their names in the dark, and they answered. The world tried to bury them, but the fire unearthed them. The shaking revealed them, and I wept again, but not in despair. I wept because even in wrath, God was writing redemption. Even in ash, he was planning awakening. Yellowstone wasn't the end. It was the bell, the blast that shattered the idols, the sound that cracked the spell of indifference, the spark that set the sleepers aflame. The fire is the invitation. The fire is the invitation. Return to the fire. And now, the world stood split in two, those who clung to the ruins of their kingdoms, and those who rose from the fire with empty hands and open hearts. I saw miracles break out in places forgotten. I saw light spill through prison bars. I saw hospitals emptied. I saw chains dissolving like mist at sunrise. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't perfect. But it was holy. This was the awakening, not emotional, not fabricated, but born of fire and sealed with flame. They must awaken. Return to the fire. The fire is the invitation. And I, Blake Austin, once a ranger, once a skeptic, once a silent man, I stood in the center of it, haunted, ruined, reborn. I had died in silence. I had seen the fire, and now I had been shown the remnant. I had to return, not for myself, but for them. He called my name in the dark. Now I call yours in the light. Return to the fire, before it burns without mercy, before it purifies without pause, before the invitation becomes inheritance. I came back the way a man is thrown from the edge of a cliff, not gently, not gradually, but all at once, like heaven had exhaled, and I fell back into the weight of skin. I opened my eyes to fluorescent lights, sterile air, wires taped to my arms, beeping machines marking a rhythm my soul no longer recognized. I was in a hospital, alive, but not really, because once you've stood in the presence of the one who made time, returning to it feels like prison, like being buried in your own skin. They said I had collapsed from cardiac arrest, that my heart had stopped for 6 minutes. They called it a miracle. They called it medical. But I knew better. I had crossed over. I had been undone. I had seen what no man should see and lived. And now I was back, not because I asked to be, but because I had to be. He called my name in the dark, and I said yes. The days that followed were a blur of questions, tests, and cautious smiles. Nurses whispered in the hallway. Doctors explained things I no longer believed. My family visited with eyes wide and full of relief. But I couldn't return their joy, because I was haunted, not by what I'd escaped, but by what I'd seen. I tried to speak, at first in fragments. Fire, judgment, Yellowstone, Jesus. They listened for a moment, and then came the nods, the awkward silences, the sideways glances. They thought I was traumatized, delirious, grasping for spiritual metaphors to explain near-death delusions. But I wasn't confused. I was on fire, and the world was made of ice. Everything around me felt dimmed. Conversations were hollow. Screens flickered like distractions sent to lull the soul back to sleep. Music no longer moved me. Food tasted like ash. I wasn't broken. I was reborn. But no one around me knew how to receive that. I went home, but it no longer felt like home. The walls felt tighter. The air felt false. Even the mirrors seemed to bend the light the wrong way. At night, I dreamed of fire, not nightmares. Visions, the kind that leave sweat on your back and tears on your pillow. And then came the resistance. It began small, devices glitching, emails disappearing, audio recordings vanishing the moment I tried to share my message. Then it grew, dark shadows at the edge of my room, whispers that came with no mouth, oppression so thick I could feel it wrap around my lungs at night. The enemy had noticed, because this message, this fire, wasn't just a story. It was a weapon, a holy truth forged in heaven, and now carried in the hands of a trembling man. I began to write it down, but pages went missing. Drives were corrupted. Voice notes deleted themselves. And I knew the enemy feared this, because it didn't just warn, it awakened. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. I tried again, told a pastor. He smiled politely, then changed the subject. Told a friend. He asked if I was taking my meds. Told a stranger. He told me to keep my religious trauma to myself. And still, I spoke, because obedience doesn't require applause, only surrender. The isolation grew, but so did the urgency. I began to notice others, quiet souls, burning beneath the surface, drawn to the same invisible ache. We didn't need words. We recognized a flame in each other's eyes, a remnant scattered and awakened, searching for each other in the ruins of the world. But they were few, and time was slipping. There's a loneliness that comes with carrying prophecy, a weight that doesn't lift with prayer or praise. It is the cost of sight, the price of being called from the grave. He called my name in the dark, so I would carry his fire into the cold. And now I walk as a man between two realms, burning with heaven, bleeding into earth. The resistance still comes. It doesn't want this story told, because truth sets captives free, and the world is full of slaves who love their chains. But I made a vow, and the fire won't let me rest. I am not here to argue. I am not here to convince. I am here to testify, because the ground beneath us still remembers, and the fire has not forgotten its name. Return to fire. Return to fire. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours. Most won't survive what's coming, not because they weren't warned, not because the signs were too hidden, but because they refused to look, because they laughed at the trembling of the earth and called it science, because they saw mercy and called it madness. I am not here to scare you. I am here to awaken you. I am here because the King set me back with smoke on my soul and a trumpet in my mouth. This message is not poetry. It is prophecy, and prophecy is not polite. It is fire wrapped in flesh. A holy scream through the mouth of the obedient. The shaking is mercy. The eruption is not wrath alone. It is a last trumpet, a final knocking on the doors we've locked from the inside. Return to the fire. Return to Christ. Not tomorrow, not next year. Now, the line is being drawn, not by governments, not by empires, by the hand of God. And you, yes, you were chosen to hear this. Not randomly, not accidentally. You could have scrolled past. You could have clicked away. But you didn't, because your spirit remembers. You were there in the garden before gardens. You heard his voice once, long before your first breath. And now he is calling again. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours. Return to the fire. Return to Christ. Return to the one who weeps over the mountain that's about to bleed. This is your invitation, not to religion, not to ritual, but to reality, to the roaring, broken-hearted love of the one who is both judge and father. Do not wait for the earth to crack beneath your feet. Do not wait for the ash to steal your voice. Do not wait to see Yellowstone become a grave for the unrepentant. The Gospels are not stories. They are survival guides. They are not ancient, they are now. Read them. Fall into them. Let them break you. Let them remake you. Because a storm is coming that no bunker can stop. A fire is rising that no science can contain. But there is a shelter, a hiding place, a cleft in the rock. His name is Jesus. Not the name used to sell books. Not the name thrown around in memes and slogans. But the Jesus who sits at the right hand of the Father, eyes like flame, voice like rushing waters, bearing scars for your redemption. Return, before the sky goes silent, before the shaking becomes collapse. Return, before the veil tears for the final time. Return to the fire. Return to Christ. This is your warning. This is your calling. This is your hour. And if your heart is trembling now, if something deep inside you is burning, pressing, aching, then you already know you were never meant to sleep through this moment. You were meant to rise. The remnant is being called, not the perfect, not the powerful, the willing, the broken, the ones who are tired of running from the one they were created to walk with. Come before the mountain breaks. Come before the smoke blinds the sky. Come before the shaking shatters the silence forever. Return to the fire. Return to Christ. Return before the earth remembers. This isn't just my story. It's yours. You may not have walked where I walked. You may not have died as I died. But the fire is calling you all the same. You feel it, don't you? That stirring beneath your ribs. That ache behind your breath. That quiet tremble every time the sky grows strange and the winds begin to whisper. You know, even if you've never said it aloud, even if you've silenced the voice within you for years, you know we are standing at the edge. The line is drawn, the veil is thinning, and the Spirit is not asking anymore. He is summoning. He called my name in the dark. Now I'm calling yours. Will you rise, or will you remain asleep? Will you stay tucked inside your comforts, wrapped in logic, lulled by routine, while the mountain prepares to groan? Or will you remember who you are? Will you remember that you were never born to blend, but to burn? Will you trade silence for surrender, convenience for consecration? Will you return? Return to the fire. Return to Christ. Return to the one who sees through the smoke and still calls you son, still calls you daughter, still calls you home. Because I've seen what's coming. I've stood in the flame. I've watched the ground scream beneath Yellowstone, and I've seen souls lifted through the ash. Not because they were strong, not because they were perfect, but because they were ready. The earth will not wait forever. The hour is already trembling. The gate is already closing. You were chosen to hear this. Chosen not for fear, but for fire, for faith, for remembrance. So I say this, not as a preacher, not as a prophet, but as a man who has died, and come back carrying what he cannot unsee. Return to the fire. Return to Christ, before the shaking becomes silence, before the sky forgets how to open, before the mercy becomes memory. If there's breath in your lungs, there's still time. If your heart is trembling, you're already being called. This is not the end of the world, but it is the end of pretending. So I ask you, in the quiet of this moment, will you rise, or will you remain asleep? Will you burn for truth, or fade into noise? Will you return? He called my name in the dark, and now, through me, he calls yours. Pray, prepare, return. And if this has stirred something deep inside you, if your soul is awake now, don't let this flame flicker out. Share it, speak it, carry it, before the next breath, before the next breaking, before the ground remembers what it was made to do. Subscribe to NDE Tales HQ. Share this before the shaking begins. Return to the fire. Return to Christ. The earth will not wait forever.